Hello, and we are continuing reading our reading in The Worst Class Trip Ever by Dave Barry. We are on chapter 12, page 112. So please turn in your books with me and we shall continue. We started at the dot for a couple, we stared at the dot for a couple of seconds. Then Cameron said, "Where is that?" Susanna zoomed the map out a little. "It's near the Capitol," she said. She switched to satellite view and pointed. "There's the Capitol dome, see?" She zoomed in. The green dot was on the roof of a smallish house to the east of the Capitol in a neighborhood made up of a whole lot of smallish houses all squeezed together in blocks. "How far away is that?" I said. She moved the map and pointed. "Our hotel is here." She zoomed partway back. Now we could see our hotel on the green dot. "That's not that far," I said. "Maybe a mile," said Victor. We stared at the map a little more, nobody talking. Then Susanna looked at me and said, "Ready?" "For what?" I said. "To go get Matt." "You mean now?" "Yes, now. While we know where he is. You ready?" The truth was, I didn't feel ready at all. I felt like crawling into bed and pulling the covers over my head and closing my eyes until this whole mess went away. But there are some things you just can't do, and one of them is tell Susanna Delgado, who you are discovering is basically a Navy SEAL disguised as a hot 8th grade girl, that you're afraid to go with her to rescue your friend. "Yeah, I'm afraid," I said. "Okay," she said. She looked at Victor. "You stay here." "Why?" said Victor. "In case Wyatt and I get into trouble," she said. "You can help us get out of it. If we're all there together and something goes wrong, we have no outside help." My stomach did not like the way that sounded. Victor nodded. Cameron said, "So I'll go with you guys?" Susanna looked at him, and I could tell that she wanted to say, which was something like, "We'd really rather you didn't go because you're kind of an idiot, and a lot of the time you smell like a badly maintained public restroom." But give her credit, she didn't say that to Cameron. What she said was, "I guess." "What's your plan for getting Matt out?" said Victor. "Depends what the situation is," said Susanna. We'll figure that out when we get there." She seemed really confident about that. We made sure everybody had somebody else's phone number. Susanna snuck back to her room and told her roommate she was sneaking out and they should cover for her, which of course they would because she was Susanna. Then she came back to our room. We turned out the room lights and I opened the door and peeked into the hall. "Nobody out there," I said. "Let's go," said Susanna. The three of us stepped into the hall. Victor closed the door behind us. I started towards the elevator. "No," whispered Susanna. She pointed the other way. "Stairs." We trotted down to the end of the empty hallway, past a bunch of rooms full of sleeping kids who were having a normal class trip and not sneaking out of the hotel in the middle of the night to try to save their friend from Kadaskastani terrorists planning to attack the White House. We went down the stairs, which led us out in the back part of the lobby. It was empty. There wasn't even anybody behind the front desk. We walked fast across the lobby and went out the hotel and down the driveway to the sidewalk. The weather was definitely cooler than it had been, and the wind was picking up. Susanna was in front, walking fast, so Cameron and I almost had to run to keep up with her. She turned right, walked to the end of the block, and stopped. She took out her phone and went to find my iPhone. "That way," she said, pointing. "We're going to walk?" said Cameron. "Yeah," said Susanna. "It's only 1.2 miles, and if we take a taxi, they might see it pulling up." "Why don't we take a taxi part of the way?" said Cameron. Look, she said, if you don't want to do this, you can go back to the hotel. No, I just. He didn't finish because Susanna had turned around and was already walking. I followed her and Cameron followed me. There was no question who was in charge of this operation. We moved fast, Cameron and I half trotting to keep up with Susanna. There was hardly any traffic and hardly anybody on the sidewalks. The stores and businesses were almost all closed. After about 10 minutes, we could see the Capitol Dome. Susanna veered down a street to the right. We made a few more turns. Susanna watched her phone screen, and soon we were in a neighborhood of the smallish row houses we'd seen on the map. The streets were dark now, and there was nobody on the sidewalks. Susanna stopped and pointed to her phone. It's in the next block. So what now? I said. First of all, we stay totally quiet. Totally. At exactly that moment, Cameron farted. Sorry, he said. If you do that again, she said, I'll kill you. It didn't sound like she was kidding. I'm not kidding, she said, removing all doubt. Okay, said Cameron. We're going to walk past the house, said Susanna. We don't stop. We check it out and keep walking. We'll stop at the other end of the street and figure out a plan, okay? Cameron and I nodded. Okay, let's go. She started walking, checking her phone every few seconds. After maybe 50 feet, she slowed a little and pointed at her right. I looked and my stomach jumped. Parked at the curb facing us was a silver minivan. Susanna kept going. In the middle of the block, she slowed down again and pointed at the house directly to her left. It was a red brick house, narrow and 2 stories high, like all the others on the block. It was attached to the house on the left, but there was a small alley between it and the house to the right. There were no lights on anywhere that I could see. The house had a front porch with a couple of metal chairs on it, looking over a small front yard with a for rent sign stuck in the grass. Susanna kept walking to the end of the block where she turned and waited for me and Cameron. What do you think? She said, looking at me. The truth was I wasn't thinking anything because I was expecting Susanna to have a plan. Well, I said, trying to think of something. We need to figure out where Matt is. Right, she said. I bet it's the basement, said Cameron. Why? Said Susanna. Because that's always where they keep prisoners. You mean in movies? Right. This isn't a movie. That's true, said Cameron. But it kind of makes sense, I said, that he'd be in the basement. They could lock him down there and there's no window for him to climb out of. True, said Susanna, a little unhappy because it meant she was agreeing with Cameron. Okay, I said. Say he's locked in the basement. How do we get him out? There's an alley on the side of the house, said Susanna. We sneak back there and check the windows. There might be one unlocked, or we could maybe break one. But they'd hear us, said Cameron, so we'll create a diversion. That was definitely a line from some movie, but I didn't point that out. What I said was, what kind of diversion? Like we pound on the front door, make some noise out there while they're checking to see what it is. We sneak in and let Matt out of the basement. She made it sound totally simple. I said, so who's going to create the diversion? I will, said Cameron. I did not expect that. He sounded really brave. As soon as he said it, I wished I'd said it. Okay, said Susanna, you hang out front. We'll go around the back and check it out. When we're ready, I'll text you and you start making noise. Try to get them to come out of the house if you can. The longer you can keep them busy, the more time we have to find Matt. Okay, said Cameron. Let's go, said Susanna. We walked back to the house. It was still dark. The street was still empty and quiet. For a few seconds, we just stood on the sidewalk looking at the house. You know how in like every horror movie, there's a scene where the people who are about to get hacked apart by a chainsaw maniac or turned into human lobsters in the secret basement laboratory come to a creepy house, and everybody watching the movie is thinking, don't go into the house, you idiots. But they always do anyway. That's what it felt like to me. A don't go into that house moment. But I could not say that to Susanna. Besides, Matt was in there somewhere. Matt was in there somewhere. Everybody ready? Whispered Susanna. Cameron and I nodded. Okay, whispered Susanna. We started walking towards the alley. And that concludes chapter 12.